Hello, Muslim friends of the world. Sirens screamed through the sky over Jerusalem. Thick black smoke blotted out the sun, turning day into night. In the distance, flames devoured the hills and pine forests that once served as the lungs of the holy city. "We thought the end had come," said Miriam Goldstein, a mother of 3 evacuated from the Bet Shemesh area. Early May 2025 marked one of the worst natural disasters in Israel's history. A massive wildfire raging uncontrollably around Jerusalem. What began as a small blaze quickly transformed into an inferno, devouring everything in its path within hours. Fueled by extreme heat and desert winds, the fire leapt across valleys and highways, racing toward residential neighborhoods with terrifying speed. The government immediately declared a national emergency. Firefighting units were deployed en masse, and helicopters carried water back and forth from the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee. But nature refused to yield. "Every time we put out one fire, 3 new ones sprang up," said Yosef Elbaz, a firefighter with soot-covered cheeks. More than 3,000 people were evacuated in the first 48 hours. Some fled to stadiums, others to churches and synagogues. But in a surprising turn, some sought refuge at the Aqsa mosque, not for religious reasons, but because miraculously it remained untouched by the fire, even as the surrounding areas were reduced to ash. Local media dubbed the disaster Hell's Awakening on Mount Zion. And amid the smoke and panic, whispers of something deeper began to circulate. Is this a punishment from God? Jerusalem was burning literally and metaphorically, and this was only the beginning. Before the embers had even cooled, the sky shifted. What was once blindingly bright turned somber and gray. Clouds hung low and heavy, and then, without mercy, the rain fell in torrents. Across Israel, from the southern desert to coastal cities, a second nightmare struck. A massive flash flood, as sudden as it was unforgiving. People who had just escaped fire now found themselves fleeing water. In Beersheba, streets turned into muddy rivers. Cars floated, storefronts were ripped apart, and hillside homes crumbled under the pressure of the deluge. In Ashdod, terrified citizens clung to streetlights to avoid being swept away. "We haven't even recovered from the fires, and now it's as if we're living underwater," said David Mizrahi, a bakery owner whose shop was destroyed. This unprecedented weather event shattered records. Within just 36 hours, some regions received 2 months' worth of rainfall. Burnt, scorched earth, left dry and brittle from the fires, could not absorb the sudden downpour, turning streets into rivers and hills into landslides. As emergency services scrambled to respond, a different kind of crisis was brewing, a crisis of the soul. More and more people began to whisper what many had previously feared to say aloud. Was this just nature or something more? On social media, hashtags like #DivineWrath and #EndOfDays began trending. And in an unexpected twist, some secular Jews began turning to synagogues, and even to imams at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, seeking clarity and answers. Fire scorched the skies, water drowned the land. "There's nowhere left to run," a local journalist said in a now-viral broadcast. Israel, a nation famed for its technological advancement and military preparedness, was left powerless in the face of 2 raw, unrelenting forces of nature. And its people began to wonder, if this wasn't just a disaster, then what was it? After the flames and floods had passed, what remained was not just rubble and mud, but a deep, unsettling fear. Amid the ruins and cries, one question echoed in the hearts of many: why is this happening? It wasn't just ordinary citizens who began to feel anxious. In synagogues and community forums, discussions shifted from logistics to spirituality. In social media posts, a video of an elderly Jewish man crying in front of the camera and saying, This is a punishment from God. We have strayed too far from his path. Went viral, shared millions of times, and translated into several languages. Meanwhile, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, standing unharmed despite being in the epicenter of the crisis, became an unlikely symbol of hope. Every day, people from various backgrounds, those who had never set foot in a mosque before, began visiting not to pray, but to seek answers. Imams at Al-Aqsa began receiving more visitors than usual, not just Muslims, but Jews and Christians alike. They came with tear-filled eyes, their voices trembling, all asking the same question. What is the meaning of all this? What should we do? Stories began to surface. A young Jewish man who had lost his family in the fires came to Al-Aqsa and confessed that for the first time, he felt peace. An elderly woman who had lost her home in the floods cried as she raised her hands in the mosque's courtyard, muttering words that were unusual for her. Allah must have a purpose in all of this. This phenomenon sent shockwaves through various circles. International media began to cover the shift in spiritual awareness quietly unfolding in the background of the disaster. On TikTok and YouTube, videos titled "Spiritual Awakening Amid the Wrath" began trending. But some ridiculed it, calling it propaganda. Yet one undeniable truth stood. The hearts of many were shifting, and it wasn't because of speeches or politics. It was because of fear and hope coming together. For the first time in a long while, in a country divided by religious and political tension, people from different faiths were sitting together, not to argue, but to reflect. And all that reflection led to one place, the sky. Amid the ruins and the scent of charred remains, there stood one place that seemed untouched by the wrath of nature, Al-Aqsa Mosque. There was no fire that reached it, no flood that touched its floors. In a city torn apart by disasters, Al-Aqsa became the one place where people were not screaming, but quietly weeping. What had once seemed impossible now became a reality. Jews sat side by side with Muslims. Some were silent, staring up at the gleaming golden dome. Others, with tear-filled eyes, asked the Imam, "What is Islam? What is the meaning of all this?" There was no coercion, no proselytizing, only raw honesty from people whose lives had been shattered. Then, a moment occurred that shook the world. A group of Israeli citizens who had survived the floods and fires openly declared the Sharia in the courtyard of Al-Aqsa. The atmosphere, once heavy with uncertainty, turned to one of profound emotion. Tears fell from both Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Cameras of journalists captured the moment, not for sensationalism, but for history. This was the turning point, not because of theological debates, not because of political power or promises of economic recovery, but because these people, who once clung to the material world, had lost everything except one thing, the chance to begin again. Al-Aqsa, which had long been seen as a symbol of conflict, now became a symbol of salvation and forgiveness. Some international media outlets even dubbed it the Ark in Jerusalem, a refuge amid the storm. And though the Israeli government had yet to issue an official statement on the phenomenon, the atmosphere in the streets spoke louder than any announcement. Faces that once were tension now appeared calm. The homes that had been destroyed began to rise again, but not just with bricks and mortar, but with a new faith forged from destruction. Israel may have been facing its greatest calamity, but in the midst of the chaos, a new light had begun to shine from within the hearts of its people.